Well, we all know what this is, Mike,
Yeah.
but the question everyone is asking, why are we playing?
Well, the reason we're playing this is because we're going to talk to an expert on royalty in a minute, Mr. Thomas Mace-Archer-Mills. But
What a name that is. Say that again.
Yes, it's
Say
Mr.
it again.
Thomas Mace-Archer-Mills, a fantastic name.
What a
Mike,
name.
you know my name is Michael Allen Newton-Parry, don't you?
I didn't know that.
Yes, it is, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But anyway, what I was going to say is, you're a fan of The Crown, aren't you?
I do
The
love
TV
The Crown.
Series.
It was a
Third
brilliant
series coming out.
Yeah.
And in some of the previews, some of the commentators said Princess Margaret was depicted as a woman who was, well, to put it politely, was a bit of a party girl, you know what I mean?
That came across in the last series of The Crown.
It did. And this so upset her son, the current Lord Snowdon, because she was married to Lord Snowdon, Anthony Armstrong-Jones, who took on the title Lord Snowdon, so their son is now the new Lord Snowdon. It prompted him to make the comment, which made a great headline all over the place, "My mother's no floozy." So he's defending his mother's honour. But I have to say, during the course of my journalistic career, I came across Princess Margaret a few times.
How many times did you come across her?
Oh, I don't know, 2 or 3 times
Right.
maybe at official events. She
Right.
did like a gin and tonic, that's
Right,
for sure.
okay.
And if you read more about the background to her lifestyle, particularly on Mustique, she, I think she could have been described as a party girl.
Okay, well, let's go and get an expert's opinion on this. This is Thomas Mace-Archer-Mills, even. Sorry, I do apologise. What a brilliant name. He's the co-founder of the British Monarchist Society. He joins us now. Thomas, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, gents. Thank you for having me.
Good evening, Thomas. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Have I been unfair on my description of Princess Margaret and her lifestyle?
Well, to be honest with you, Princess Margaret was full of all sorts of colours, but it's definitely true that she was a party girl.
Yes.
I mean, it was, you cannot deny it, no matter how much her son wants to, but that was only a small part of her life.
Right.
And I think the depiction that The Crown has put out has been pretty fair in certain parts.
Okay. When you say it was only part of her life, what was the other part of her life we don't know about then?
Well, we look at the trauma that she went through. We look at, of course, being the spare.
Yes.
This woman was up against her sister, who's the queen. She's up against her mother, who was a former queen.
Yeah.
So when she's trying to fit in and find her niche, there wasn't one.
No.
So it was very difficult. She had no formal training, no formal education. What was she to do in life? I mean, the first thing that happened after the Queen became the Queen in 1952, she was at the Royal Variety Show with the Queen in the same box, and she lights up a fag. Like, what's going on here? And that was not acceptable, but she didn't care. She did what she wanted. I mean, and then, of course, you have the paparazzi and you have the media. Their heads exploded like a thermonuclear explosion. But that's what she got off on. She likes that.
Well, I mean, she was a party girl on Mustique, wasn't she? We all know about, her boyfriend, Roddy Llewellyn, but there were other boyfriends, apparently. One of them was John Bindon, notorious, I wouldn't say notorious criminal because he got off a murder charge, but he was a certainly notorious gangster-type character, wasn't he? And
she needed that.
Yeah, she did. Needed the danger, didn't she? The danger and the sort of, the intrigue and all that. But because she was brought up as she was, Thomas, I've read reports of her being an entirely selfish woman, and if she was partying big, and she wanted to stay up playing the piano till 3 o'clock in the morning, then everybody else had to, because nobody was allowed to go to bed until she did.
Exactly, and that is the truth. But again, I have to stress, that was not all the time. And when we look at what she did for charity, as president of the Royal Ballet, I mean, this is a woman who really loves theatre, who loved opera. Her passion, really, was you could not put a measure on it for the arts, and she was known as the Princess of the Arts. Of course, there were parties after the arts had taken place, but...
Well, she was quite fond of a gin and tonic, I know that for sure.
Well, the whole family. Look at all the royal women. I mean, it's the secret of youth. That's what it is. Drink more gin, you live longer.
But, Thomas, there's a very big difference between being a party animal and a floozy, isn't there?
Of course. Yes, there is. And
so why has her son felt the need to come out and use that particular word? Because being a party animal is as long as you play within the rules, and you may stay up a little bit late as long as nothing's illegal going on. But being a floozy, well, that's a different accusation.
Well, of course it is, and it has a whole different meaning to it. And when you look at The Crown and how they've really touched on this subject, floozy is not the right word at all. This was a very unhappy woman. She tried to seek happiness any way she could.
Yeah,
and
I agree
maybe
with that.
some of the things that she did were questionable to us, but we don't know what that life is like and the stress and the pressures.
No,
But floozy,
yeah.
I'm sorry, that woman, she might have done a lot of things, but a floozy was not. She still had integrity and dignity in supporting her sister and a reflection of the Crown.
I mean, can you imagine having a life which so lacked direction or meaning that apparently her daily routine was that she had breakfast in bed, the papers were brought up to her, she lit a few cigarettes, she came down at about 11 o'clock after spending an hour in the bath, and she had a few more cigarettes and an open day gin and tonic. Then she would lunch at home with friends who'd come round.
What's her life?
Yeah, you know, because she couldn't just go out to a restaurant in London, so somebody would come to Clarence House and have lunch with her. She'd then have, you know, an early evening cocktail at about 4 or 5 o'clock and dinner somewhere out in some private room somewhere, and that was her life, day in, day out.
And that's true. Royal life back then, the 50s, 60s, even the 70s, was very different. And protocols were very different. The establishment was different. These people, even though they might have wealth, they might have celebrity, number one, they're royal, but number two, the amount of responsibility, they are indentured servants.
Yeah.
And imagine how unhappy to be in such a gilded cage where you're not even alone and by yourself all the time.
Yeah, no, it's true. I had a colleague on the Daily Express called Ashley Walton. He was the royal correspondent, so he followed the royals all over the place, you know, and got onto the diner beat and everything. But on one occasion, he told me that he was just doing a routine royal job when Princess Margaret turned up in the back of a limo or a Rolls Royce or something to open a factory somewhere in Lancashire. And as they opened the door, she fell out onto the pavement. She was completely intoxicated. You know, it was sort of 5 in the evening, and she'd been on the G&Ts all day.
So it's an escape, really. Princess Margaret, she needed an escape.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the first time that there's been an indiscretion like that. Imagine the fight within herself. She has no formal place. She's always overshadowed by her sister.
Yeah.
She wasn't allowed to marry the woman that the man that she loved. She
Captain
was a
Peter
woman.
Townsend.
Yeah, Group Captain Peter. And they kept her away. The establishment went against her all the way. So what did she do? She made her unhappiness very well known. And I mean, we see it here. Let's look at William and Harry. This is the thing. Of course, William is duty. He's the dutiful. And then we look at Harry. So it's a mirror image of the Queen and her sister and Charles's children.
I think actually Harry and William, in particular Harry, because there was a period where you felt that maybe he was going to be the Princess Margaret of this scenario, but it hasn't quite materialised. He's been.
But Thomas is right. The closer William gets to the throne and the more responsibility he takes on in preparation for what's to come, the further away he'll move from Harry, and Harry's role in life will become more and more meaningless. It's a pity, isn't it, Thomas, that the royals can't do more than 3 or 4 years in the the calling of their choice, the army, the air force, or something like that. But
and he loved it.
Yeah,
Harry loved it.
Yeah.
But at least he had something to do. Whereas Princess Margaret, she was there as an ornament. She was gorgeous.
Yeah.
She could have been a model. She could have done a million things, but she was happiest when she was watching theatre or at the ballet. And did you know, when she actually was on the Archers in 1984, when she played herself, that was the happiest she's ever been because she felt that she was contributing to something bigger than herself.
Doing something. You can imagine, can't you, when she's on the island of Mustique and all these hangers-on go over there just to keep her company, really, and just to smoke cigarettes and all that. Can you imagine what a meaningless sort of lifestyle that was, day in, day out, sitting on a beach?
Exactly.
And just quickly, are you a fan of the Crown?
Well, I am to a certain aspect. I have to give credit where it's due.
Right.
Sets are phenomenal. But the script writing is creative writing, and it's good creative writing because we never know what's truly said.
Absolutely.
It's speculation. But the way they portrayed a few things, also questionable, and the timeline, how they've manipulated it, but overall, It shows them for the real people with the issues and problems they have. And some of them have some major issues.
Yeah, indeed.
Thomas, you've been a star. Appreciate your
Thanks,
time.
Thomas.
Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
Gents, anytime, I do appreciate it. And can I sit back down now that you've stopped playing God Save the Queen?
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Thomas.